The title of this presentation is Prisoners of War. It's time to stop organized gang stalking and electronic harassment on targeted individuals. Now, organized gang stalking and electronic harassment are also known as in-community no-touch torture because the techniques and tactics that are being used against the target are happening from the people in the community all around them, and it's not that something physically is being done to the target from the people involved. It's being done in a way that is mental and through the use of what are known as psychotronic weapons. And so the effects that it makes the person who is targeted feel as if, they're a prisoner in their own home or a prisoner within the community. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because I care. Obviously, as you can tell by the nature of this presentation so far, I'm not a professional movie maker, and this is not meant to be a highly stylized, highly edited video. This is my attempt to help targeted individuals and to help raise awareness for what TIs experience and go through, and to show people that this is not a conspiracy. I am a free-thinking atheist, and I can tell you that this is happening to me, and for the longest time I didn't know what any of this was called. I didn't know what any of these terms were. All I knew is that I was being mistreated, that I was hearing things inside my home, that people outside my home knew what I was doing inside my home, and so on and so forth. And I didn't know that there was a system to all of this. I'm going to show some evidence of the harassment, and the only thing that I ask is that whether you believe my story or believe other targeted individual stories, I ask that you treat TIs with respect. TIs are people who are really mistreated. They're not shown a lot of kindness by other people. They're met with a great deal of anger and hostility, and a lot of times they don't even know why they've been targeted. But they just get treated very poorly by a lot of people. They're pretty much the punching bags and the scapegoats of the community. So whether you believe this is real or not, I'm asking you to, if you come across someone who is a TI, treat them with kindness and treat them with respect, because you may be the only person, who is kind to them for weeks or months at a time. Now, organized gang stalking and electronic harassment seem on the surface to be a strange occurrence. If someone tells you someone is reading my mind or something like that, you would probably look at them funny. I know that I have talked to people, and they'll say, well, you're very intelligent, and you seem to be well researched and things like that. And then when I tell them that I'm a targeted individual, they go, well, I just can't accept that someone is listening in on our conversation, and they find that difficult to believe. And so one of the things that I would like people to understand is that if I were to tell you I had a stalker, for example, and that stalker was following me everywhere I go and watching my home and watching my movements and things like that, you would not think that that was strange. But if I tell you there's a group of stalkers, as is exactly what happens with organized gang stalking, you would think for some reason that, I'm telling you something that is just so far out there. And in reality, stalking is stalking, whether it's being done by one person or whether it's being done by a group of people. And the same thing for harassment. There are countless stories of people being harassed by their neighbors, people being harassed on their jobs, people being harassed by strangers. And so in light of these types of technology that exist today that we know about, I'm talking about the technology that we know about, why is it so difficult to believe that there could be technology out there that allows the harassment to go to extreme levels? So, like I said, on the surface it may seem like a strange occurrence, but if you really stop and think about it, stalking and harassment are not uncommon things. These are common things. It's just that when it happens to the targeted individual, it's happening on a massive scale, and it's happening using enhanced tactics and techniques. So it's believed that this affects between 3.4 and 25 million people worldwide, and it affects all demographics and walks of life. It's an underreported crime for which there are very few enforceable laws. And unfortunately, TIs are often misdiagnosed with mental illness and are institutionalized. Now, it's believed that this is government technology, but that it may be in the hands of corporations and civilians. And it usually starts with a smear campaign. So one of the things that you'll first notice when you become a TI is that you receive low-key hostility from people. You know, you may go to a restaurant that you've never been to before, and the waitress is super rude, and you just kind of, you know, dismiss it. And then you go to the store, and the cashier is low-key super rude to you, and you just dismiss it. And then after a while, you notice that you're dismissing a lot of hostility. It's like you're kind of confused. You find yourself in a state of confusion like a lot of the time. And it usually happens, you know, when you go out. And unfortunately, for targeted individuals, there's usually an operative on the inside. So it could be your partner, it could be your roommate, it could be, you know, a parent if you're living with a parent. And so you notice strange things happening in your home and strange things happening outside your home. And so you could be a TI for years and not know it. And then what you will find is that there's very little help from the police and traditional support systems, because either they are in on what is happening, which happens a great deal of the time, or they don't believe you when you try to tell them that this is happening to you. And there's a reason for that, which we'll explore. Now, the goals of organized gang stalking and electronic harassment are very simple. The main thing that they try to express to you is that you are a bad person. I mean, that's the number one thing that they try to get across to you. You're bad, and you deserve to be punished, and you deserve to be mistreated. And kind of secondarily, they also want you to believe that somehow, you know, you're stupid. So you're weird, you're stupid, you're bad. You deserve to be punished, you deserve to be mistreated. And so they try to humiliate and shame you, especially slut shame you. They will take very innocent aspects of your sexuality. I mean, most adults over the age of 18 have looked at pornography. Most adults have sexual fantasies. Most adults have sexual preferences. There's nothing unusual or wrong with that. But the people who perpetuate this crime against the target will take that target's sexuality and use it as a weapon against him or her to try to humiliate him or her, or shame him or her in the community, with the goal of smearing, you know, that person's name and ruining their reputation. The goal is also to prevent employment and to ruin you financially, to just drain your resources completely. They want you to lose your sense of privacy and autonomy. They won't let you go to the bathroom in peace. If you go into the kitchen, they have a noise for the kitchen. You know, when you wake up in the morning, the noise campaign, and I'll explain what all these things mean. But, as soon as you wake up, the noise begins, and it's perpetuated all throughout the day, everywhere you go, so that you lose your sense of autonomy. And they basically want you to think and feel the way they want you to think and feel. They don't want you to have a mind of your own. So that sense of self becomes eroded. That sense of individuality is constantly under attack. It's abuse, it's bullying, it's torturing, and it's tormenting. And it's crazy making behavior, also known as gaslighting, that if you're not careful, and especially this happens to a lot of TIs in the beginning stages of the targeting process, you will find yourself, being sent to a psychiatrist or being sent to a mental institution because you're being gaslighted or made to feel as if you're crazy. And if you don't know what gaslighting is, I encourage you to do a little bit of research. It's when, someone in your home arranges things or does things inside the home to make you think you're going crazy when really they have an ulterior motive. This leads to isolation. It causes your relationships to become unstable. They basically want to ruin your life. And organized gang stalking and electronic harassment are also known as slow kill, because what happens is that the person, if they don't do some sort of mass shooting or something like that, they end up committing suicide because they see suicide as the only means of escaping what is happening to them. So in my opinion, that's murder. But these people who do that don't see themselves as murderers. They don't see themselves as doing anything wrong. They see themselves as pillars of virtue and morality, when in actuality they're criminals and murderers. Carol Smith, in the Journal of Psychosocial Studies in 2003, wrote a very interesting article on the need for new criteria of diagnosis of psychosis in the light of mind-invasive technology. And in all the research that I found, she's really one of the only people in the psychiatric community that I have come across who has a really good understanding of the fact that the psychiatric community can no longer just diagnose someone with schizophrenia. I mean, there has to be some sort of diagnostic tool in place to figure out if the person really has schizophrenia or if they are the victim of some of this covert harassment. And she called this invasion into another person's mind an act of monumental barbarism. She also called the people who do this unseen mental rapists, and how difficult it is to stay sane and to have the type of endurance that tolerates being treated this way over extended periods of time. So it's a very interesting article, and I encourage you in your research about this topic to read this article for yourself. Now, I wanted to mention Amendment 8 that talks about excessive bail and excessive fines. It also says that cruel and unusual punishments should not be inflicted. And so when you think about what's happening with organized gang stalking and electronic harassment, at its core, at its basis, these are human rights violations. These are constitutional violations. These are civil rights violations. And so the people who do this, they really are criminals. And the people that this is being done to are being subject to cruel and unusual behaviors. And it really is sick, and it's not right. So let's take a look more in depth at organized gang stalking, abbreviated OS. Now, again, organized gang stalking is organized harassment, or, as I said before, in community no-touch torture. Basically, you are the scapegoat of the community. You're the punching bag of the community. You are the person in the community that everyone projects their hatred and hostility onto. You are the one in the community that people rally around to hate. People make it a point to go out of their way to be, nasty and hateful towards you in various ways. They come up with all different sorts of ways to be disrespectful and ugly and nasty to you. And you really become the scapegoat, of the community. The people who do this are called perps, or perpetrators. And targeted individuals, or TIs, are the people who are being harassed. Now, we also think that there is a such thing as a handler. And this is an individual who really is sort of behind the scenes and sort of scripts everything. And I'm going to talk about the techniques and everything that are used, but they're the ones who really kind of call the shots. They're the ones who sort of closely monitor the TI, and they pay attention to what works so that they can kind of reuse the same tactics over and over again. One of the things that you will notice about this whole phenomena is that it's really repetitive. They don't, I mean, it seems larger than life when it first starts happening to you, but after you've been dealing with it for a few years, you come to realize that it's super, super repetitive, and that they get into a rut and they pretty much just start to do the same thing, every day. For example, when I go to my bathroom, I know exactly what three things are going to happen when I go into my bathroom. When I go into my kitchen, I know what two things are going to happen when I go into my kitchen. When I go to see my counselor, I know exactly what's going to happen from the time I set foot on my front porch, get in my car, drive there, sit in the waiting room, see my counselor, leave, drive back home, come into my. I know exactly what the process is going to entail. I know everything they're going to do, all the little performances that they're going to put on. So, but all that has to be handled by someone, and it's usually the handler who does that. And then finally, you have the audience, and the audience are the people in the community who witness the campaign against the TI. A lot of them know what's going on, they know it's wrong, but they don't do anything because, they don't want the same thing happening to them. So, the first tactic in organized gang stalking is sensitizing, and that's when everyday sounds, colors, cars, words, and or objects are used to sort of coyly reveal to the TI that they're under surveillance. And what's so sinister about this sensitizing method is that it does employ mundane things. It does employ everyday things. So when you go to try to explain to someone what's happening to you, or you go to try to tell them, you're being followed, or that people are repeating to you something that you did online or said inside your house, because it's an everyday thing, because it's an everyday sound, a lot of times people will kind of look at you crazy, like, well, that's not really that big of a deal. But the thing is, it's a big deal to you because you're experiencing it firsthand, and it's happening to you everywhere you go. Everywhere you go, you're seeing the same color, you're seeing the same object, you're hearing the same sound. And so as you are becoming sensitized to that, object or sound or color, you know, it makes you realize that someone that you can't see out there beyond you is scripting things around you and is trying to shape and influence the way you see reality. Now, another common occurrence in organized gang stalking is known as street theater. This is when a person or a group of people will act out a scene in front of the TI. And this is where you get a lot of the color combinations and the noise combinations and things like that. And it doesn't just happen like out in the street. It can happen at a location. It can happen at the TI's home. It can happen, for example, at the doctor's office. It can happen anywhere, actually. And when this used to happen to me, I didn't know it was called street theater. So I would go out, and then, when I'm stopped at the traffic light or whatever, I'm at an intersection, there's these people, they're all dressed the same way, and they're interacting with each other, and they're just putting on this big show and this big performance. And then I would come home, and I'm like, what is this skit? Why is it everywhere I go, someone's putting on a skit? And that's what I used to call it. I used to call it skits, because I didn't know that it was called street theater. Now, one of the more nasty aspects or nasty tactics that are used against TIs are the noise campaign, which is extremely invasive and very obnoxious, and it's very, very difficult to counter. It's when sounds are synchronized with the TI's activities and sleep pattern, and the noises just basically follow you around, and they follow you everywhere you go. And it's meant to sort of have a conversation with you or to get a message to you. Again, the goal is to make you feel like you're a bad person, to make you feel like you're weird, to make you feel like you're stupid. So they will come up with noises to correspond to all of those concepts. So when you hear this noise, that means that they're telling you you're stupid. When you hear that noise, it means they're telling you you're bad. And so all day long, you're going to get this message that you're bad, you're stupid, you're bad, you're stupid, you're weird, you're bad, you're stupid, you're weird. And it just goes on and on and on all day long. Another technique is called brighting. That's when perps flash their lights at the TI all times of the day or night to let the TI know that they're being watched. And the opposite of brighting is also known as shadowing. So you may notice that either you're being brighted or you're being shadowed. And so that may seem like it's a little bit weird. I'm actually going to show you an example of brighting on the next slide. But when you have your blinds over your window or whatever, and you happen to glance at your window, and then you see a shadow go across your window, and that happens over and over again. It's like that. So let's take a look at this brighting. I think I got it now. Okay, so what you noticed in that little clip is that, first of all, I'm at home. So for all of you people who criticize TIs for, documenting the mobbing in the street theater when it's out in public, and you say, where you've got a camera out in public and you're, videotaping people and you're part of the problem. The first thing that I want you to pay attention in that video is that I'm at home. I'm not out in public. I'm in my own home, and I'm at my own laptop. And the bright red light is coming from outside the window to my right, but it's to the left on the screen. And what you'll also notice is that there's no light flashing as long as I'm sitting there, and then I get up and go into the next room, the red light starts to flash, and then as soon as I come back into the room and sit down, it stops. So that means that someone outside of my home is corresponding a flashing light to my movements within my home. Okay, and that's just one example of many. I could put many more examples in this video, but I'm just going to keep it there because they all basically show you the same thing. All right, let's take a look at the electronic harassment part. Now, common terms for electronic harassment are known as the use of psychotronic weapons. And probably one of the first names that you're going to come across is John C. Lilly and the Lilly wave. You're also going to hear this called the extremely low frequency or ELF weapon, a directed energy weapon, voice of God or voice to skull, synthetic telepathy, remote neural monitoring. And when you hear these noises and voices inside your head, it's known as a microwave auditory event. Now, I know that the idea that someone can read your thoughts or read your mind or put sounds inside of your head is difficult to believe, but I would encourage you to go to this website. It's by a friend of mine named Omnisense, and he put together a list of some directed energy patents that you can find on Google. And you can see how far back the technology goes. And you can also see that the technology exists, okay, because there are patents to prove that the technology exists. Another insight is called wanttoknow.info, and it has about 2.5 pages of non-lethal weapons in the media, or different articles in the media that will also help you on your in your research goals. If you don't like those sites, if you can consider them to be a little too much on the conspiracy theory side, you can go to NBCnews.com. This is obviously not a conspiracy theory site, and you can find this article that comes right out and tell you that the Army is developing synthetic telepathy. Again, this is from the Russian defense minister in March of 2012, and the use of psychotronic and electromagnetic weapons to remote control the human nervous system. And then finally, I do want to acknowledge that there are limitations in terms of how much research can be done on the electronic weapons. And this particular researcher, the first thing that he talked about was the limitations, because this is not disclosed technology. I mean, one of the reasons why you find it difficult to believe is because it hasn't been on the 6 o'clock news. Okay, it hasn't made its way into the mainstream media. And so for a lot of people, if it's not on the mainstream media, then it's not something that they're going to believe. And one of the reasons why targeted individuals such as myself and others make these type of videos and websites and so on and so forth is to raise awareness so that these covert technologies can be disclosed and brought into the public, and so that people know these types of abuses, human rights abuses, are taking place, so that it can be stopped. Now, in this video, I'm going to show you a demonstration of V2K and how remote. So there you can see, and one of the interesting things that the scientist, who's showing the technology says is that it's nothing to go from having to put the little sensors on your cheeks to doing this wirelessly. And so if someone can beam music wirelessly into your head, then of course they can put words and sounds and other things wirelessly into your head as well. So let's take a look at targeted individuals. Why are victims targeted? Sometimes it's because they are a whistleblower, or because they have expressed an anti-government sentiment. They could be a non-believer, such as myself, although this happens to Christians as well as non-believers. You may have an angry ex, or a vengeful neighbor, or a jealous coworker. You may be pissed off the wrong person. A lot of times what I notice is that targeted individuals kind of think differently. They kind of live their lives differently from the crowd. And a lot of times just being different can make you the victim of bullying anyway, because you don't think like everyone else, or, you're kind of your own person. And I've noticed that a lot of TIs, they sort of are kind of individuals. They kind of, think differently. They kind of have a different approach to the way they see the world. I mean, that's just something sort of anecdotal that I noticed, for myself. But it could be something about you. I mean, I've seen instances where people felt they were targeted because they were homosexual. They were targeted because they broke up with someone. So there could be lots of different reasons. Some people just fall victim to serial harassers. Some people make a hobby out of harassing someone. Where I live is a very rural area. It's people don't really have a lot of education here. They don't really have a lot to do with themselves, and so it makes it kind of easy for them to target me, because I'm pretty much at home all day, and so are they. So they can harass me all day long. And then, sometimes the reason is unknown. You could have said something or done something that was completely benign to you, but the other party maybe took it and, held a grudge against you, and, decided that they were going to, make you pay, or, punish you. So how does it affect the TI's life? You feel violated, you feel degraded, you feel demoralized, and this happens in the beginning. Now I am at a point where I don't feel these things. I not even an hour ago went into my bathroom, and when I was on my way into the bathroom, I said, okay, these 3 things are going to happen once I go into the bathroom. I went into the bathroom, I closed the door, and everything that I said was going to happen happened. So Do I feel degraded by that because someone made a noise while I'm in my bathroom? No, not anymore. There comes a saturation point, and I think that a lot of times perpetrators and handlers don't realize that there is a point of diminishing returns. So you can keep making the same noises, you can keep, throwing this hatred and hostility at this person, and just because you keep doing that over and over again, it doesn't mean that that person is going to feel that way that particular time, the same way that maybe you made them feel the first time that you did it. I mean, if you do something 1,000 times, the 1,000th time isn't going to have the same effect as the first time. So, it's violating and degrading and demoralizing until you get used to it, and then you just move on. There's loneliness and isolation, which lessens the quality of life. You may lose your job. You may end up in poverty. You may end up homeless. There's depression. And then there's something that I think is really interesting that doesn't get discussed a lot, and that's the mental instability. Because you are the scapegoat of the society, because you are the punching bag of the neighborhood, you are subject to the emotions of the people around you. So they are constantly projecting their hatred and their anger onto you. And so if you don't have a strong constitution, if you're not, mentally fit and mentally prepared for that type of long-term abuse, you will find your mood to fluctuate, as they project their emotions onto you. And so it really is unfortunate. Constantly having someone tell you you're bad, constantly having someone tell you you're stupid, it kicks your self-esteem. I mean, until you recognize it for what it is and get over it, it will make you feel bad. You're victimized, you're made to be the villain, of the community, and it never ceases to amaze me how someone can violate your privacy, violate your human rights. In some instances, women even report being sexually abused by people. You are smeared and demeaned and treated below the threshold of human dignity by these people constantly, and yet they try to make you feel as if you are the victim. Okay. TIs experience symptoms of PTSD, they experience symptoms of torment, and they also experience symptoms of Stockholm syndrome, because your avenues of support start to dry up, and eventually you have to start depending on people that don't like you. So that means that you have to, try in your heart to forgive people who don't deserve your forgiveness. It means that you have to try to get along with people and be nice to people who are being low-key degrading and nasty towards you. I actually had to get a therapist to help me deal with my assigned therapist, because my assigned therapist was slut shaming me. So I had to get a therapist to deal with my therapist, you know. And unfortunately, it leads to thoughts of suicide and harming others. Targeted individuals find themselves in a lose-lose scenario. If you ignore the perpetrators, then they will ramp up the behavior until they have an effect. Once they have an effect and you notice them, it's going to get worse because what they did to you eventually worked. So you're in a lose-lose situation. And just like this roadside sign says, Big Brother is watching you, and electronic harassment, it is torture, it's abuse. And if you find that you are a target, I encourage you to reach out and start putting together a support system as early as you possibly can. So as we transition into that, let's take a look at some steps that the TI can take. The first step is acceptance. You have to accept the fact that you are a TI. You have to realize that you are under attack mentally and physically, and that there are forces at work that are trying to control the way you see yourself and the way you see reality. And as soon as you can change your thinking to that of a victim, to that of a survivor, you're going to be on your way to overcoming a lot of the abuse that they're trying to make you feel. I know that it seems impossible, but you can live in an abusive situation and not allow that abuse to become internalized. You know, you can be around people who say lots of negative, ugly things about you, but that doesn't mean that you have to believe any of the things that are being said about you. You don't have to accept someone's lies about you. You don't have to accept what someone thinks about you. You know, one of the things that I say to myself often is, how you feel about me is none of my business, and I don't care. Now, recognizing that illegal technology is being used against you by immature people, I can't stress that enough. The people who do this are passive aggressive beyond human comprehension. They are malignant narcissists beyond human comprehension. There's no low that they won't sink to. They are the epitome of immaturity. And the odds are against you. I mean, like this little pawn in the picture against, you know, all these other chess pieces. You know, you're facing an army and you're pretty much doing it by yourself. It's cruel and it's inhumane, it's cowardly and it's unethical, but you have to recognize that it's ultimately worthless behavior. One of the reasons why they have to do it constantly, one of the reasons why they have to constantly bother you and constantly harass you is because the behavior is so worthless. I mean, okay, so you made this noise, okay, and that is how you show me that you don't respect me. Okay, you made your noise and I got it. I got the message. And now I'm going to get on with my life and nothing has changed. So, what did you just accomplish? Nothing. And I also can't tell you how many times I have outthought these people, outlogic these people, exposed them to be hypocrites, exposed them to be ignorant, exposed them to be just as stupid as they try to make me believe I am. And so if I can be at such a severe disadvantage, if you have all the advantages, if you have me under 24-hour surveillance, and I can best you, and get the best of you and make you look stupid in front of the whole community at least one time, not to mention I do this on a daily basis, then you really are a pathetic individual. Because to have all of the advantages at your disposal and you still can't win the battle, I mean, come on. So I want TIs to recognize the fact that you are an amazing person. I'm not just saying that to say that about myself. This is what I recognize in all TIs. They are amazing. They are strong. They are capable. They are resilient. They're determined. And they have something that the people who do this against you will never have. And that is knowing that deep down inside you are a good person. And I actually believe the people who do this hate themselves. And there's a man who talks about order followers, people who follow orders and they just do what the higher ups tell them to do, and how they secretly hate themselves. And that's part of the reason why they do what they do. And I actually believe that to be the truth. One of the things that you have to start doing is protecting yourself. They do try to disrupt your sleep patterns, so try to get plenty of rest, try to exercise, especially things like yoga, and try to eat healthy. Get those vegetables in, frozen vegetables, canned vegetables, however you can get, fruits and veggies into your diet. Whole grains, lots of water, try to stay away from sodas and diet sodas and things like that. You have got to look at your body as a weapon, and you've got to try to keep that weapon in the best shape that you can possibly keep it in. And if you can't get to a yoga class or an exercise session, you can find a lot of these resources on YouTube. Lots of people upload yoga routines and exercise routines that you can follow from inside your own home. Protect your sanity by keeping a journal or a blog or a video log. Meditate. soothing, classical music has been shown to help heal the body and the mind. If you can find a caring counselor, do so. And, if your first counselor starts to show signs that he or she is, in on it, then try to kind of slowly transition to a different counselor. And, you may have to keep trying. But you owe it to yourself to have a support system. And so, do the best that you can to try to find that for yourself. Reach out to other TIs. There's a growing TI community on YouTube, on Twitter, on Facebook. Do the things you enjoy. Do new things. Protect yourself. I can tell you that there are TIs who, got weapons, and a lot of the targeting stopped, when they armed themselves. I'm not telling you to be violent against anyone, but I am telling you that someone is perpetuating a crime against you. And if you were at home and someone intruded into your home, you would defend yourself. And so, I feel like a TI should do what a TI has to do. You're not the criminal, and you have to see yourself as a success and not give up. And I would implore you to please not commit suicide, because what these people are doing to you is not worth it. You don't deserve to be treated the way you're being treated. And if you could just recognize that and sort of wrap your mind around that a little bit, maybe it will strengthen you and help you to get through, the way that you're being treated. Do your research and document as much as you possibly can. If you can upload the evidence to the cloud, you should. You can get whitelists and call blocker apps if they're bothering you on your phone. You can get earplugs or noise canceling headphones if the noise campaign is getting to be too severe. And I can't really state that enough. I don't think people really understand what it's like to have people slamming doors and revving engines and playing loud music. And, I've even had people throw rocks at my house, throw rocks at my window, fire guns over my bedroom. Just anything they can do to make a noise. And that part of it is really invasive. It's really obnoxious. But I also say that it's really the more ignorant aspect of it, because how smart do you have to be to make a noise at someone? It doesn't require intelligence to do that. So I think that's why it's used so much, and it's overused actually. If you can unsensitize yourself and ignore the behavior, do so. Organize, petition, research, make videos, make web pages and forums, and spread the word to your family, friends, and doctors and counselors. Yes, they're going to say you're crazy, but show them this video, show them the research, make a printout of some of the patents. Tell them the same thing that I said in this video. Stalking and harassment are not, if I tell you I'm being stalked and harassed, I'm not telling you I was abducted by aliens. So even if some of the more unbelievable aspects are difficult to believe, it shouldn't be hard for your family and friends to believe that someone is targeting you and, or organizing a campaign to mistreat you. That's not a difficult thing to believe. Now, it's time to take organized gang stalking and electronic harassment to the mainstream. It's time to get radical. We need people who are willing to ignite a spark. We need people who are ready to bring this into the light and shed some public recognition and get the public debate going about this phenomenon. You can call or write radio and news stations. I've seen several local news stations do stories about organized gang stalking and electronic harassment. So there is a precedent for this being reported, in the news. It's not unheard of to see this in the news. There are some police departments that know about this, taking place. And so there's hope, is what I'm trying to say. It's just going to take, more people speaking out and, kind of doing their part to shed some light on, what's happening. If you can find legal representation, I know of at least one TI who was able to do that and to turn the tables on the people that were doing this, to him. What we could really use is a constitutional lawyer, someone who would take up our case for us and start petitioning the courts to make this covert technology um, known to the public, so that TIs are not seen as crazy people who are just part of some conspiracy theory. TIs need to mobilize nationally and worldwide, and we also have to prepare for the backlash and the discredit campaign. And then lastly, I encourage TIs to support and be there for one another. Now, everyone who is a TI has their own special theory about why they're a TI and how it's happening and how it's being done. And sometimes TIs will argue with other TIs because they don't agree with how it's happening. And what I have to say about that is this: if you're a TI, you're being abused by people covertly. And if this other person is a TI, they're also being abused by someone covertly. So you're both being abused by someone covertly. Even if you don't agree on how it's happening, you do agree on the fact that it is happening. So don't fight with one another. Always try to be supportive and to be there for another TI, even if you don't share their theory as to how or why it's happening. You can survive being a TI. This is my email. It's powk@yahoo.com. And you can survive being a TI. I'm surviving it every day. And I like this little quote from this woman named Jacqueline DuBois that I saw on YouTube. She said, "The universe gives to those who give, and it takes from those who take." And so when I see a quote like that, I know that in the end, the people who do this, they're not going to get away with it forever. And I find TIs to be the kind of people who are the ones who give in the relationship. And so, maybe it's time for you to kind of open your arms to the universe and allow the universe to give, back to you in a way that you deserve. And you don't have to feel, survivor's guilt over that. You don't deserve to be mistreated, and what is happening to you is a crime. And if you can remember that and stay encouraged in your spirit, I think that you will begin to understand what it means to be a survivor of this type of illegal covert harassment. So I thank you for listening, and I hope the best for all those who are involved in something like this. And I hope that I've helped to shed some light on this terrible, terrible thing that's happening to a lot of people, and no one deserves to be treated this way. So I thank you, and I encourage you to continue doing your research. And if someone tells you that they are a TI, even if you don't believe them, treat them with kindness, because a little kindness goes a long way. Thank you.